Now, whether you are a pioneer or one in the making, whether you want to become the go-to and build a strong brand, a business or a personal brand around it, or you want to reinvent yourself, you are in for a treat, because today's guest has done all of that and a lot more. I've known of her way before our worlds actually collided. I'm inspired by her forward thinking and by her way of doing business and by showing up. So I'm excited to bring this incredible guest to you listeners. Danielle Lewis is in the house. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited. That was such a fabulous introduction as well. I've also been a huge fangirl of yours before our worlds collided as well.
It is so funny. Like, honestly, you've got one of the strongest brands that I've known of way before we actually met, because you have built a name for yourself in the tech community, in the female founders community, in so many different startup communities, but also in the speaker community. I'm curious, how did you get to where you are?
A series of happy accidents.
Yay.
Yeah, no, so I guess, my philosophy at the beginning of starting, so really creating my personal brand coincided with when I started Scrunch. So Scrunch is my first business, an influencer marketing community, which I'm sure we'll get into. But I started that over 10 years ago now. And at the beginning, my philosophy was just tell everyone on the planet. So it was any opportunity that I could have a coffee with someone, sit on a panel, speak at an event, go to an event, show up online. I literally just did everything. And I think as a result of that, because I was early in female in tech, especially in Brisbane where we started, there was no females in tech 10 years ago. So I think I was a bit of a novelty back then. So, government agencies would roll me out on panels as, a token female. And I think that's how I sort of became a little bit more well-known, because I just made sure I was everywhere in the beginning.
And you've done an incredible job. And this is also what inspired me and always stood out to me, that you have been in male-dominated industries and professions for pretty much all of your life, and you didn't change the way how you show up. And also, what fascinated me, that you are not only following trends, but it seems that you're setting trends. Like influencer marketing, it's now becoming a big topic. And you said, I started 10 years later, it's old news for me. And since then you started another few businesses, which we're going to talk about also. And I know you're onto your next chapter. How do you see trends? How do you go about distilling what works, what is actually, there's some substance to it, and what is just hot air?
Yeah. Look, and there's a few markers that I look for when we either start a new business or change the direction of our business. The first one is competition. So, if I look around and I go, oh my God, everyone's now doing what we were doing. So, when we started Scrunch, we were absolutely pioneers in the influencer marketing space. There were like no influencer agencies when we started the agency. And, and this is sort of, precursor to what we were chatting about before we started recording, was I turned around at the beginning of this year and I was like, oh my God, everybody's doing this. And the only way to differentiate ourselves was X and Y. And I said, nah, that's not for us. So I started looking around at what was going on in the industry, to look ahead, really, to figure out what the next step might be. So the first area is competition. The second area is just me personally. So I consume so much content, read so many books. I'm so interested in learning and growing. So I kind of have a little bit of a sense on what's going on. And what I'm interested in. So they're probably the main two. If I'm going, oh my God, everyone's doing this, it's old news. And what am I seeing, work? And also, again, a little bit personal. What am I interested in? You've got to, I think, be really excited about the business that you run as well. So I always try and infuse our brands and businesses with stuff that I love. So, in my other business, Spark, which is a global community for female founders, I'm always drinking wine in all of our content, because I understand how difficult it is to build a business, especially as a female founder. So I want people to know that the content is accessible, it's interesting, it's fun, and there's no pressure. So so I guess how I foresee the future, really looking at competition, a lot of research, and then making sure I infuse it with, my own values.
Oh, I love this approach, because it not only makes you stay relevant in the game and the business, but it also makes you stay curious. Because in the
absolutely.
end, if you're not, what you just said, if you're not passionate about it, it's like, just another day. And especially high performers and high flyers, we hate average and
oh
just
my gosh,
doing
yes.
the doing. It's like, oh.
Yeah. And I think too, like, you get to that stage where you do get bored of doing the same thing over and over again. And especially depending on your personality type, but a lot of founders always want the new shiny object. So don't get me wrong, I do have to balance, oh my God, I could do this, I could do this, I could do this. So what I'm trying to do lately is write it down on a piece of paper and then come back to it. So, and trying not to have that like shiny moment and then build something that day and make a change that day. But yeah, I think as founders, we always want to push forward and we always want to innovate and try new things. And I think that's what makes us great as founders. But sometimes we do need to, I guess, rein that in a little bit and think more strategically and put our CEO hat on and make sure that it's right for the business as well.
Oh, so true. I love it. And the next question would be, when do you know it's time for a reinvention because things have become a little bit boring and stale and so forth? Or when do we know it's just a shiny ball that we are chasing because something just doesn't quite go right at the moment, but it's not quite time to pivot yet? Do you have a guideline that you define?
Well, the short answer is no. But I maybe have some insights because I think it is different for everybody. So Scrunch is like the poster child for pivots. So we've been around for 10 years, and in that 10 years, we have been so many things. So the first 5 years of Scrunch, we were really just throwing stuff at a wall and hoping it would stick. We were like a social media platform, a fashion platform, an inventory platform, a media monitoring tool. We tried so much before we landed on influencer marketing. And it was kind of like just worlds colliding when that happened. We had the right team, the industry and the market was ready. I'd been a blogger for 10 years before that. We just saw that opportunity. So, I think that maybe the key to pivoting at the right time or experimenting is actually just being open to it. And the other thing is you don't have to burn down your whole business to try something new and start again. So the funny thing about Scrunch is if we look back at all of the different products we had, we could have literally started it, go, that's not working, close it down, start something new. But we always kept it in Scrunch and we always just piled things on top of each other till we found what worked. And when we actually pivoted or made a new change or tried a new product, we didn't close down the other product yet. We kind of waited, tested the waters to see whether the new thing would actually happen. So it's kind of de-risked the change process a little bit. And one thing I've learned over the time of doing that as well is to sell it first. So I've made the big mistake of building stuff on a hunch and it's not working. And so I very quickly learned to sell first. So what I mean by that is you can literally, if you have an idea on something that you think is going to be a thing, you can literally jump into a platform like Squarespace and build a landing page, have it all up there, have someone purchase from you the same day. And that is so low risk, so little time and money investment, but it helps you test the idea and test the market. So I think now we're a little bit smarter about the way we pivot and change, because if we have the big shiny moments and ideas, we'll put up a landing page and we'll try and sell it first, or we'll even run an event around the topic first. And if there's enough interest, then we'll actually create a product or a business or something around it.
Oh, amen to that. Absolutely. And, thank you so much for being so honest and, saying that you didn't land where you are now straight from the get-go. It took a while.
I wish.
But I think so many, when you're thinking of doing something different, even changing careers, especially after COVID-19, so many have rethought their career and still rethinking it and realizing, it's actually not what I'm really passionate about for the rest of my life. I want to do something different. But if I'm not perfect straight away into that, or, I'm not the top performer in this new professional role or industry, I didn't make it, quote unquote, but it doesn't just happen.
Oh, totally. It totally doesn't happen. And also, like, how boring doing the one thing for your whole life. Like, I think it's really interesting, actually, because I think it makes people get really stuck when they don't know the next step or they can't see the future. And people say that to me. They're like, oh, you're this business owner, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah, but I've had 1,000 different business ideas. I've had a bunch of different jobs. Like, I studied fashion design, which is completely different as well. Like, I've tried so many things before I actually, landed on the things that I like. And even this year, we've literally changed up what we're doing at Scrunch again. So I think you do have to keep changing and progressing and moving forward and trying new things. And the first thing that you choose probably won't be the thing. But also, like, a great story, and what if you're at a party and you're chatting to somebody and you tell them about their experience and that inspires them to create that or do that thing, and then they go on to live an amazing life. Like, I think shared experiences are only positive.
So true. And also, what I also want to mention, that you said you stuck things on top of each other, you didn't get rid of it. And this is also when somebody is still in a full-time role, for example, rather than jumping ship straight away and quitting their full-time role into something that you think might be the next step. Why not try it? Give it a test drive. If you want to become a public speaker or a consultant, who can you consult to on a freelance base on the weekend for 5 hours? It doesn't need to be a 40 hours week and replacing your entire income and life straight away, because of course that's daunting. And I want to highlight that, especially as business owners, we are seen to be taking risk, but I think we're the least risky people, because we, if income falls away completely, then there is no business
freak
anymore.
out.
Exactly. So diversifying and trying safely and then pivot when it's approved and verified, yes, then go for it.
Yeah. And it's really interesting. So I stayed working at my full-time job for years into building Scrunch. So it wasn't until we raised capital, so we had other people's money, that we were like, okay, we need to be all in on this now. But that was the best thing, because it meant that we had income coming in that was secure. And then we just spent all of the rest of our time, maybe a little work time, building the business as well. But it was such a good way to do it. And if you and there's so many employers now that are more flexible working arrangements and working hours. You, even before you're ready to quit completely, you might even drop back to 4 days a week or 3 days a week. There's so many different ways to think about it now, which I think makes the process of trying new things or starting a business even easier.
Absolutely. And I think you can actually bring so many more benefits to your role when you do something completely different. Like if you are a management consultant, but your hobby is to draw or to sing or to whatever, you can use the creativity into your day-to-day and come up with new innovative solutions. And also what you said before, you are showing up with a wine to every session, and this is becoming part of your brand. You want to connect with somebody way beyond their job title and their credentials and their years of experience, because that's boring. Everyone's got that now these days. But what makes you stand out? And what I also want to highlight with you, when I think of you, it's being a leader, being an entrepreneur, being an innovator, and you can pivot into any direction. Speaking of pivoting into any direction, I'm curious. We had a very little pre-chat about your next direction. What is happening in your world and what's happening after Scrunch, or next to Scrunch, I should say?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm very excited. So we sat down at Scrunch at the beginning of the year, or maybe end of last year, and, setting the strategy for 2022, as you do. And it was a really funny moment, because we did look around us and look at competitors, and we were like, oh my God, everyone is doing a version of the exact same thing. And, yes, we were innovators in the beginning, but I was like, okay, the only way to innovate in that space is two things that weren't really that interesting to us and would cost a lot of money. We'd have to raise capital again, all that kind of stuff. And I was like, that's boring. Don't want to do that. Not interested. And the other thing that was really kind of getting under my skin a little bit was the amount of cost that goes on in influencer marketing. So it's a really funny ecosystem where there's so many players. There's like tech platforms, the influencers management, a media agency. So you're stacking cost on cost on cost on cost. And I was just like, for the end brand or the small business that's actually then paying this influencer, they're absorbing all of these crazy costs. So I also wanted to create an environment where small businesses or, brands that didn't want to waste money could really find influencers and get access to this community, Netflix style, like $10 a month. So so that was kind of the initial thinking of us, our business and our competitors. And then one thing that I've been following really closely, over the last sort of 12 months is this thing called the creator economy. And it's funny because it crept into language. So we talk about influencer marketing as influencers and influencer marketing. And I started to be on these podcasts where people would say the word creator and they're like, oh, are we allowed to call them influencers anymore? Are they creators now? And so I was like, okay, what is going on here? And so there is this fundamental shift that's going on at the moment away from just the what you think about an influencer with just people that promote brands and products through a sponsored post, to something called the creator economy, where it's actually, you and I could be considered contributors to the creator economy. It's really, so they say there's 50 million people contributing to this economy right now, and it's creators, it's community builders, and it's all of the tools that really help and support those creators. And they're individuals that are really building things from scratch. Some influencers do fall into that category. And what we're seeing is influencers becoming creators, becoming founders of businesses, and then CEO. So it's this real fundamental shift in what's going on in influencer marketing towards this creator economy. And so we said, well, we better be at the forefront of this. So we have, literally changed up Scrunch, and we are now a global membership for influencer marketing professionals and creators. So we provide an annual awards, unbelievable education tools for both sides of the market. Of course, still our amazing technology platform, and the community. So you can literally, as a creator or a professional, jump in there and ask the community a question. We have a members only podcast, all that kind of cool stuff. So it's really about how we can create a community around this economy and support all of the players in it who want to go from being a creator to a business owner.
What a story. And also what a testimony. You also said, we were the innovators and all of a sudden we are not. And this is what we're seeing in literally every industry and profession. Our best thinking 1 to 5 years ago is now our biggest baggage, because things change, economies are changing, expectations, consumer expectations are changing, and not staying on top of that or hopping onto the next bandwagon. Web 3.0 is a thing and it's here to stay, and it's going to evolve, and NFTs and so forth. And just because we may not understand it quite yet doesn't mean it doesn't happen around us already. And being one of the first and embracing it for what it is and experimenting, this is exactly what sets you ahead of the curve already.
Exactly. And I think that's, that idea is what I want to give to people in the creator economy as well. So I want to say to them, yes, I get you've built this amazing following. Excuse me, that's my post-COVID cough. Yes, you've built this amazing following on Instagram or TikTok or whatever it is, and you're getting these sponsored posts. But it's time to, and you can, if you want, be in charge of your own destiny. And there are all of these amazing ways that you can build a business, because the thing you've got to remember from, being an influencer, that everyone who's been an influencer for forever has gone, and businesses know this as well, that you are beholden to social media algorithms. algorithms. So at any moment, you're not getting engagement on your posts anymore, which means you're not growing as quickly, which means you're not getting increased revenue if your only revenue source is sponsored posts. And for brands, if you're relying on one channel, the same thing happens to you. You see sales decline. So we really want to empower people to understand the future. So exactly what you said, what's coming up, what's Web3, what are cool platforms that you can use? How do you monetize your followers? How do you use multi-channel strategies to really connect with your customers? That kind of in I guess, education piece, and that knowledge and that the foresight to make sure that these people have successful businesses, that's what we want to give to marketers, brands, and creators so that they stay ahead as well.
Music to my ears. As the saying goes, never build a house on rented land. And
exactly.
With social media, it unfortunately happens. And even though influencer marketing was a big thing and still is a big thing, you're still reliant on somebody else's mercy in the end. Zuckerberg
That's
decides,
it. If you don't have an email, if you don't have a website and an email list, if anyone's listening, stop everything you're doing and do that now. Exactly. You need to own your own destiny. Absolutely.
Exactly. And also, last week I was teaching about social media trends, and I was talking about the changed feed on Instagram, that it's going to look like TikTok and, more explore opportunities and so forth. And I said, in a second that happens, I'm out. Like literally the next morning, there was a night class and I logged in. I was like, no,
it's happened. It's all over.
It's all over. But, I'm so grateful that I've built my community on LinkedIn. That's kind of my audience. And also now with the podcast and my email list that I own. And this is, what, as you said, you can be in control of. And what we also see with the Great Resignation and the gig economy and the freelance economy, that you need to create your own commercial opportunities. But if you don't have those connections, the relationships, the database, who do you send it to? I mean, yes, of course, you've got in-person relationships still, but they're not going to be there forever either, or they're branching out into a different direction.
Exactly. And, I always say this to influencers as well. I'm like, if you have 100,000 followers, and people say my community, but it's like, if you have no way to reach them other than by posting, and that all of a sudden only reaches a couple of hundred people, you've very quickly lost your community. So you really do need to focus on, so communities is huge right now and is the way of the future, and especially in Web3. So if you think about that, whether you're an influencer, whether you are a business owner, whether you are an employee building their personal brand, it's all about relationships and communities. And you need to really understand where your community is and how you can make sure that you do actually own that relationship.
Absolutely. Now I'm curious, which is a bit off topic, but what are your thoughts on Web 3.0, on NFTs, on, the metaverse? What does it mean for marketers, for us, for influencers, for us business owners? What does it mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's huge, to be honest. So I'm thinking if anyone's listening and they're like, oh my God, it's already done past here. It isn't. Like, I know it's very popular and everyone's talking about it right now, but we are still very much at the very beginning. It's like, when social media came out, we are still scratching the surface. So I think it's here to stay, and it's absolutely going to be a part of our future, whether we are, right now we're on Zoom, right? In a few years' time, we could actually be having this podcast recording in our virtual space, and the thing is we are, as humans, the stuff we have really does represent our identity. Like if you look at my space here, you can see I've got all of these books because I go, yes, I appreciate learning and growth and the plant and the art and the whatever. It really speaks to who I am as a person. And that's not going to go away. Like, the clothes we wear, the stuff we have is really that representative of our identity. If you were a corporate and you walked into a boardroom, you'd be wearing a particular type of suit. And that says something about you and your role. And the same thing is going to happen in the metaverse. So there's going to be a virtual NFT instead of an artwork. It's going to be my NFT of women of the world or some other cause that I believe in. I'll be wearing a virtual version of this t-shirt by my favorite brand. So all of those are opportunities. And if you are a brand who wants to capitalize and wants to think of the future, absolutely thinking about your place in the metaverse and Web3, I think is really, really essential. NFTs, I'm obsessed with at the moment because of the utility behind them. I think there's a lot of people that just think that they're images, but the real projects to watch are the projects that have some kind of cool utility. So Women of the World, VFriends, we're releasing our own at Spark, which is so exciting. But anything that really supports a cause or has some kind of usefulness, they're going to be the NFTs that really thrive in the future.
And yeah, thanks so much for explaining that. Also, to clarify, NFTs obviously is artwork, but from what I understand, it's more the access that you get with it to a certain community that creates the value behind it. Is that correct?
Exactly. So absolutely, there are just some that are virtual artworks, but the really interesting projects that have longer term value do give you some kind of access and utility. So whether it means you can attend a conference if you show your NFT, whether it means that you get exclusive access to a restaurant, which is absolutely happening right now in New York, or whether it just means you get additional content. So, you could actually release a line of NFTs and your NFT holders get one-on-one coaching with you and this bespoke content. So yes, it's all about, like, depending on the cause and the brand or the company that creates the NFTs, as to what kind of extra level of exclusivity and access you get by being an NFT holder.
You know what? I've actually been thinking about that already, especially for the corporate programs and for the corporate teams. So, watch this space.
I know. I'm obsessed with them at the moment. Yes.
We need to do another episode just on that, what we can actually do with it. Now, to wrap things up, what are some of the skills that are relevant for us to foster, to stay relevant, or any kind of experiences that we should embrace a little bit more? What would you say would help us to future-proof ourselves and to stay relevant?
Yeah, I think adaptability, absolutely. It's really interesting. I was having a conversation with some business owners earlier this week around COVID, and, absolutely, it was horrendous for a lot of businesses, but it was interesting because for business owners who've been around for a long time, it was just another thing. It's like, there is always a challenge. There's always something happening. COVID was just another one of those things. So I think adaptability is so, so important. Realizing that the world is going to change dramatically. There's going to be unforeseen anythings happen in the world or your life. So you do need to be adaptable and open to change. And then I think the other one is just curiosity and learning, because that will, it just unlocks something when you read a book, when you listen to a podcast, when you attend a virtual event, when you do a course. Like, they are the things that plants the seed in your mind that helps you then take the next step when you really understand what's possible. So they're probably my top two. And then persistence. I always throw in persistence because it's bloody hard and it never happens from the first day. So you've got to keep going.
Couldn't have ended any better. And I absolutely agree. Staying curious and seeing what's next. Speaking of, where can we get more of you? Where should we connect with you and stay up to date? What's happening in your world? Absolutely.
So if you're in the marketing space, scrunch.com is the best place to go. If you are a female founder, sparkfoundersprogram.com for all of that good business stuff.
Excellent. I'll put all the links in the show notes. And thank you again for leading the way, for coming onto this podcast, and for exploring the future of work.
Amazing. Thank you so much for having me. It's been awesome.